Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I took a little time off just to do a few things in my life. I've been working and doing a lot of stuff around my house, so I do apologize that this is coming out a lot later than the week that I promised you, but I'm going to do my best to try to get an episode out every week. Just be patient with me for the beginning. I'm still trying to figure all this out. And it does take a little while to gather notes and come up with stories. So I would really appreciate it if you can head over to my Instagram, truestory_podcast_, and comment some Connecticut cases that you'd like me to go over. So another thing about my Instagram is that I do polls on my story so that we can come up with what I'm going to be talking about in the next week. So I did put up a poll about if I should talk about a murder case or a paranormal case, and I got an overwhelming amount of votes on the paranormal case, so that's exactly what I'm going to be doing today. I did plan on having this podcast be part true crime and part paranormal. So I'm really excited to be talking about this next one with you because it's super interesting and a lot of people have heard about it, but they don't really know the whole story about it. So stay tuned for that. But besides that, let's just get right into the story. All right, so today we are going to be talking about the haunting in Connecticut. Now, I'm sure you've all heard about the movie A Haunting in Connecticut, but did you know that it's actually based on a true story? I bet a lot of you do, but we are going to be talking about that today, so I'm really excited about that. So the film actually came out in 2009, which seems so long ago, I can't even believe it. The story is based on the Snedeker family, Carmen and Alan Snedeker, their 3 sons, their daughter, and 2 nieces. Those are all the people that we're going to be talking about today. So unfortunately, their oldest son was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. So they made a choice to move to Connecticut to be closer to their doctors and to save some money. They ended up finding a place to rent out, and so they just did the whole move. What they did not know was that the house that they rented was a funeral parlor in the past, with the tools and bloody furniture still in the room in the basement. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm all for haunted houses. I think that is super cool to go in there and to kind of investigate that, but I would never live in one. And if I was about to rent or buy a house that was previously, let's say, a funeral parlor or, I don't know, where someone died in, I would like to know that before I moved in. But unfortunately, this family had no idea. They just saw something cheap and they jumped right onto it. I forgot to mention that the house is located in Southbury, Connecticut. So even after finding all of the creepy things in the basement, the family still moved in. Most people think that they stayed just because it was cheap and they didn't have to find a home that didn't meet their requirements. They had a good amount of people living in the house, so they did need the room. And funeral parlors are obviously very big with multiple rooms for the workers and for all the stuff that they have going on. So some strange things started happening around the house. The mother started noticing items around the house go missing. Then the kids started seeing people in their house. Specifically, a man with long black hair. No, thank you. So, a little bit about the man with long black hair. Carmen, the mother, said that the night that they moved in, quote, "My son started seeing this young man with long black hair down all the way to his hips. He would talk to my son every day. Sometimes he would threaten him. Other times he would just stand there and just say his name, which was enough to scare him," unquote. During the course of his treatment, the older son Philip, his cancer went into complete remission. But when he started claiming that he saw someone or something, that is when doctors diagnosed him with schizophrenia. So he literally went from having cancer to not having cancer to being diagnosed with schizophrenia because he started seeing this man and seeing all these creepy things happening. So soon, the oldest son had a huge personality change that included violent outbursts. He started attacking family members out of nowhere and just wasn't acting like himself. So that's when the doctors diagnosed him with schizophrenia, but the family really didn't think so. They thought that the reason for the weird behavior and violent outbursts was because of the ghosts in the house. So the family ended up sending that son to live with other relatives, and the outbursts stopped, and he stopped hearing voices. So that is just so interesting. He moved into the house, his cancer disappears, but then he's diagnosed with schizophrenia because of all the stuff that he's seeing. He moves out, and everything goes back to normal. I don't know, red flag to me. So when Philip left the house, Carmen said, quote, "One night, my 18-year-old niece said to me, 'Aunt Carmen, it's coming, can you feel it?' She said her niece clung to her in fear, and when she peeled her back, she saw the impression of a hand going up underneath her nightshirt. This is when she knew for sure they were dealing with something supernatural. So the Warrens are going to be talked about in this episode. But before the Warrens came, the family contacted their parish priest and the local archdiocese. A researcher, John Zaffis, who investigates paranormal phenomena, went to the house. He claims to have seen a spirit in the main stairwell and say to him, "Do you know what they did to us?" John told People, the magazine, all he wanted to do was get the hell out of that house. But the weirdest thing that the family reported was that the parents claimed they were sodomized by something in the house. The family ended up staying at the house for another 2 years, so people didn't quite believe them. Why would a family stay in a house that has all these ghosts in it? So when things didn't get better, the family hired paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. I do want to do an episode just about them because they have so many things that came out of them going to different houses and talking to different people. So I don't know if you know about Ed and Lorraine Warren. You probably do, but they are paranormal investigators and they're super interesting. So I'm just going to give you a little synopsis of what they did in this case. Ed and Lorraine were self-taught paranormal investigators based out of Connecticut. Ed was the demonologist, lecturer, and author. Lorraine was the clairvoyant and medium. They were a very controversial couple, as you might think. A lot of people didn't believe in what they did or what they believed in. But Ed and Lorraine went to the house and spent weeks there to get the full experience. I actually found an article from NBC Connecticut about what Lorraine said after she did this investigation. So apparently after she went to the house in Southington, Connecticut, she was getting a ton of phone calls to just get any type of quote or a meeting with anybody to find out what she found, which was getting quite a bit for her. Eventually, she did talk to NBC Connecticut about what really happened. So Lorraine starts saying that it was back in the 80s, her and Ed were called. It was very late that night, and the woman who called was Carmen and her niece, and they were living in the home at the time. The night that Carmen and the niece called Lorraine and Ed, they were really terrified. Her niece was in a small bedroom in the back, and the covers on her bed were levitating around her like there was a fan blowing them around. Lorraine said that the mother was on the phone with her while this was going on, and then even more bizarre things started happening. Carmen said that she had rosary beads in her hand. They were in the kitchen, and then the beads were actually being pulled apart in her hand and falling to the floor. So Lorraine and Ed went over that very next morning with the family's priest. Lorraine said that even the priest was scared. A blessing of the house seemed to do nothing to calm things down. Once Lorraine and Ed went to the house, they decided to contact the bishop's office in Hartford, Connecticut. They were very open to them about what was going on, and apparently the bishop's office knew about Ed and Lorraine, and they've actually helped them in the past. So 2 priests were sent to the house in Southbury, and both of the priests were very high in the church, and one had been used as an exorcist. So they went to the house and they did a mass right there. But during that mass, Ed, who had recently suffered a heart attack, started having severe heart palpitations. So enough was enough. They stopped right there. They knew that an exorcist needed to happen, but they didn't want to do it because of Ed's heart condition. They didn't want to do it with him there, just in case something happened to him. So after Ed and Lorraine did leave, the church did send another exorcist, which seemed to do the trick. But whatever was happening in the house, apparently it stopped after that exorcism happened. But there was one thing that happened during the exorcism that they still can't quite put together. There was a really big tree in front of the house, and half of the tree, with no wind, broke and fell off into the property. So during the exorcism, a tree just completely fell in half and fell right onto the house. And that was the end of it. That was the last thing that happened in that house. And very shortly after that, the family moved out. So now this was quite a short story that I had, but I kind of just wanted to give the paranormal stories a bit of an introduction. Like, this is what I'm going to be talking about. This one was kind of all over the place because this had a lot of different things going on when it came to the movie and the Warrens and the priests and the family actually telling their side of the story. So I do apologize if it was a little confusing to follow along. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this and you learned a little something about the haunting in Connecticut, which happened right here in Southbury, Connecticut. I mean, super close to home if you're from here. And I mean, people always hate on Connecticut, but there are some creepy things that happen here. So I'm really going to be doing some more investigating on some of the paranormal activities going on here. But I hope that you guys have a great week. I am probably going to be going back to a true crime story next week, or I'm hoping to get another one. I'm hoping to get 2 out in February, so definitely stay tuned for that. But I really appreciate you guys listening. Follow me on Anchor. The app is literally just Anchor, ANCHOR, if you don't have Spotify. But if you do have Spotify, just keep listening to where you're listening to it right now. And follow me on Instagram so that you are always up to date. Thanks, guys. Have a good one, and stay spooky.